we are making a work of interactive fiction. And so we have to constantly remind ourselves, like, okay, let's make sure the player is engaged the entire time they're playing.
So I am joined today by Donald Campbell, and we are going to be talking about the Minds Eclipse. So for people that haven't heard of this game before, Donald, why don't you give us a pitch of the game?
Sure. The Minds Eclipse is this gritty visual novel that is takes place far in the future. It places the player in the shoes of a man whose wife has died in some sort of tragic event, but that's all that he can remember. He can't remember anything else, and so the player has to uncover throughout the course of the game, uncover what has happened in the location that the game takes place in.
Awesome. So I think the first thing that jumped out to me about this game, and from the great poster behind you might be jumping out some people watching this, is the black and white style of the game. It's very striking, and I wondered if you could talk about why you chose to go that direction, why you chose to draw this game in that style.
Yeah, really, it came down to, okay, so I wanted to do something that was minimalistic because I wanted to make a simple game. I also really enjoy black and white photography, and so I decided to kind of marry those two ideas together and do a game that would be minimalistic black and white. And when I had that thought, I went and looked, and I didn't see a lot of games doing that. And
Sure.
so I was like really happy. I was like, wow, that's kind of a unique thought. I mean, no thought is unique, right? But it was more unique than others that I've had. And so, yeah, so we decided to go with that style and try it out. And honestly, it didn't start off with the pure black and white noir that you see back here. We actually started off with sort of a grayscale look. So the game actually, I first started playing around with some pixel art, and that was terrible. And then we did sort of a grayscale, black and white style, and then finally it just evolved into this like pure black and white, high contrast. And I remember when Diane did the first piece, she sent it to me to just try it out. And I immediately said, nope, we're going to do all of this, just like this piece. It's all going to be this piece. We got to redo the others because we'd already made an entire alpha build based on the grayscale images. So yeah, that's and it's been really good to see now. I've seen a handful of black and white games come up on Steam, but not a ton. But it does seem to me that they are getting more traction because when they come up on the Steam store, they seem a little bit more unique. So they kind of stand out in the sea of color.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing I wanted to kind of touch base on, and if it relates to the black and white style, you can kind of work that into that as well, is the fact that this is a visual novel. And we've covered some other visual novels, and I've asked this question before, but I like kind of comparing notes between different developers. What are some of the challenges you've found in working with that genre, and what are some of the strengths?
Oh, sure. I made some notes for this. So one of the challenges I've had and have to deal with every day is to not make it boring. So I love story in games. It's actually why I play games. But when I just want to kind of blow off steam after work, I actually gravitate towards first-person shooters. So I'm making a game that is complete polar opposite to a first-person shooter. And so I sit here and I think, okay, are we engaging the player enough? We have to remind ourselves, okay, like we're not writing a novel, we're not even writing a short story. We are making a work of interactive fiction. And so we have to constantly remind ourselves, like, okay, let's make sure the player is engaged the entire time they're playing. One of the issues I've seen as when I went through and started playing a bunch of visual novels is that sometimes they might get bogged down in too much text or too much dialogue that doesn't really go anywhere. Sort of having dialogue there for the sake of dialogue. We have 3 writers on the team for this game, and it's a constant constant battle to make sure that like the messages in the game aren't too long, or the dialogue doesn't just kind of keep dragging on. We try to make our point, and kind of move on to the next scene. And I think what you'll find with the game is that, instead of being, it's not going to be a 40-hour adventure.
Mm.
It's going to be a concise game that's to the point. But I think that we are succeeding in making it such that the player is going to be engaged the entire time they're playing. And so I'm really excited about that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Have you had to cut specific parts of the story that you really enjoyed to meet that goal of keeping things concise and directed to the player?
Yes, absolutely. I wrote an entire sort of Bible. Like we kind of joke that we made a science, like a space opera, and then decided to condense it down into this small game.
Mm.
And that's true. I mean, we have a huge backstory for the universe that we've created surrounding, these environments that the player explores. So I know just recently we went through and we had you've played the demo,
I
right?
have, yep.
And so for those that don't know, there's these messages that the player uncovers, that they find hidden around the environments, and they're not that big. There's a couple, 2 to 3 paragraphs, I think, are some of the longest. So we started playing around with larger messages to really like get some points across and get some of the backstory across, and they ended up being about most of a page, the entire screen, and we just recently cut those out because they're too long, you know. And I just they end up kind of stalling the game, in a way. And so we kind of rethought it. We went and said, well, we like having these items in the game, so we took the items and we redid the entries with the items and ended up sort of making them like encyclopedia entries that go along with the items, but they're much shorter than, say, some other games out there that give you a lot of information. We're trying to be concise with our world building. So that was a case where we cut some things, we kind of brought it back, but brought it back in sort of this trimmed new format. And actually, I just put a blog post up on the site about this, that shows off the new item design and the new, the new item discovery tab that comes up when you do find a new item. So we're really excited about that. We think people are going to be very happy. It's going to be very rewarding for a player to find some of these items because they'll use some of the items to get to new areas in the game. But some of the items are there for collection purposes. Some of them may have a hidden meaning or a hidden use that may not be clearly communicated to the player. So yeah, we're very excited about that.
Awesome. Well, turning from the Minds Eclipse specifically to your backstory, what got you involved in independent game design?
Yeah, so I used to do a lot of writing for fun, like short stories, and I'm a huge fan of like reading science fiction, and so I kind of always wanted to do some sort of storytelling, and I just I kept seeing all these independent games coming out, and it really excited me. So I just decided one day to sit down and just start making one, and so yeah, and that's the Minds Eclipse. It's actually my first game. So I just sat down and said, okay, I want to do something science fiction, and I have some short stories that I've written. So I went and ended up sort of merging maybe 2 or 3 of these short stories, and that became the Minds Eclipse.
Cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you have played games for story in the past. What are some of the games that have served as inspiration for you?
Oh, sure. The big ones. I think the big ones in recent memory for story and world building, I really like and enjoy the BioShock series.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are fantastic games. It also has some first-person shooter aspects.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I really enjoyed those games. I think for me, in college, I had this sort of revelation when indie games were becoming more prominent. I ended up playing Digital: A Love Story. And it made me realize that you can have a really cool, compelling story in a game that's really not that complicated. So that was sort of a revelation to me, and I kind of ended up sitting on that point for a few years. Again, writing these short stories, but I was kind of thinking like, okay, well, like if I ever make a game, it can definitely be simple as long as it tells a good, compelling story. And then just some other games, maybe less on the story. I'm a huge fan of the Homeworld series. That's more of an
Mm.
RTS, of the RTS genre. One of the fun things about Homeworld that I just really sticks out in my mind is the opening cutscene for Homeworld. It's actually black and white if you go take a look at it. And the opening cutscene really draws the player into the universe that they've created, and it did a really great job with that. So it's a cool cutscene to go check out.
Cool. To kind of bring this to a full circle close, we like to ask other developers what other indie teams or indie games that are out there right now are doing something they think is really cool, something they think is maybe been overlooked by the people. So, do you have any shout outs to those?
Yeah, I have one today. It's a visual novel. It's called Along the Edge, and it is a beautiful, well-written visual novel with multiple endings, with definitely a few hours of playtime available if you want to do the multiple paths. I really enjoyed the story. I thought it was engaging. I thought the dialogue was really engaging. And I'm actually surprised that it hasn't gotten more press than it has because I think it's a really awesome game. And I was a really huge fan of specifically the dialogue and the way the characters were posed against each other while they were giving dialogue or talking to each other, rather. It definitely came off as a unique way to approach that aspect of visual novels when characters are talking to each other. So definitely worth looking into and playing. Definitely think it's well worth the price on Steam.
Awesome. Well, Donald Campbell, thank you for taking a little bit of time to talk to us about the Minds Eclipse and your background.
Yeah, yeah, no, thanks so much for having me on. I really enjoy doing these, so I'm definitely looking forward to you guys doing the playthrough when the final game comes out.
Absolutely, we're eager too.